My journey is probably a little bit different than most people because I don't think I really ever intended to be a journalist. I didn't grow up wanting to be a journalist. I wanted to grow up like so many people wanting to do so many other things. So I was born in Los Angeles. If you want to go from the beginning, I'm going to go from the beginning. I was born in Los Angeles and, my parents were Mexican immigrants. I went to live in Mexico when I was 1 and came back when I was 8. So basically my first language was Spanish. But coming back to the US, I grew up like many working class families. My mother was a seamstress. My father did a lot of different odd jobs. I started working when I was 14. I worked in a clothing factory, cutting threads. My mother used to work in that factory, so I went to work with her. And then I continued to work all through high school. And I went to junior college and didn't finish college. I just went to junior college. And I studied marketing, and that's what I wanted to do. But I always worked because I had to, not because necessarily I wanted to. I never really felt that it was a burden. My mother never complained about not having money to pay the rent, but I knew that I had to help them to pay the rent. So it was very natural for me to do that. I was working in radio. I did start working in radio. I worked in radio for a few years in Spanish language radio. And then one day I got an offer to work in television. And I said, television, but I love radio. But if I work in television, maybe that'll be an opportunity for me to go into the sales department and work in advertising, which is really what I wanted to do. But they hired me to be on camera. And I was very scared because I had never been on camera. So when they told me, no, you can't continue radio because you are going to be on TV and you have to start working at this hour and you have to leave your radio show. I didn't want to do that, but I had to. So the first couple of weeks when I started working in television, I was very shy. It doesn't help that you're shy when you have to be in front of a camera. So I got laryngitis, which is the medical form of saying I was petrified. I was very scared. And even when I finally was able to sit in front of the camera and start reading, they put me as an anchor in the beginning with zero experience. So in the morning, I would go out and do 2 to 3 news stories. I would come back and do a public affairs program called Los Angeles Ahora, Los Angeles Today. And that show was a public affairs program. And I used to host that live. And then I would edit my stories and do the newscast. As you can imagine, for someone with that experience, that's a lot of work. So what did I do? I doubled up and worked even more because I went back to school. I went to UCLA and I had to take broadcast journalism courses. And at the same time, I was still working. And eventually, when I was anchoring, it was very difficult for me to look at the camera. So I used to read and look like this. And my director would yell. He was Cuban, so he would say, "Chica, levanta la cara," raise your face. But I was embarrassed, little by little, I would raise my face. And I used to make so many mistakes, and it was so frustrating for me. And I would always say, "Perdón," every time I made a mistake. And the director said, "Don't apologize." I said, "I just made a mistake." "But you're reminding people that you made a mistake." I said, "But how can I try to fool them that I didn't make a mistake when I just made a mistake?" And I said, "When am I going to stop making mistakes?" He says, "One day you will stop making mistakes." And one day I stopped making mistakes. From one day to the next. From one day to the next, something happened. So there were a few wake-up calls that made me realize how important what I was doing was. So remember, this is Spanish language television, Channel 34, what is now Univision. This is early 80s, 1982. The Latino community in Los Angeles was about 25%. Now they're over 50%. The Latino community in the United States was 14 million. Now we're 62 million. Spanish language television at the time was important, but at the same time, it was seen by many as low budget, low power, low quality station that only recently arrived immigrants watched. And it was very hard for people to give us interviews. Because when I would go and request an interview with a politician, I covered a lot of local politics, they would say, "You're from Channel 30 what?" And we don't have anybody here that speaks Spanish. I said, "Don't worry, I speak English and I can translate." Or they would bring the janitor. "Oh, the janitor here speaks. Maybe you can interview him, or he can translate for us." So it was tough in the beginning. And there were a few things that I think made me realize how important what I was doing was. One of them is that when I would go out and cover stories, people in the community would come to me and they would want to take a picture with me. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not a singer, I'm not a novela artist. And they would not be asking the same thing of experienced reporters that worked in English. They would come to me because of Los Angeles Ahora, because of that community relations show that I was doing, the community affairs show that I was doing. Because in that show, we were giving people information about, I don't know, health fair or job fair, or the type of news that you can use. They were hungry for this information, and that it was so valuable to them that we were provided, that I in particular was providing this information to them in their language so that they could understand. It was sort of like the type of information you need to get by in what to so many was their newly adopted country. And I said, what I'm doing here is like really, it goes beyond just telling you the news of the day. This is what happened, who, what, when, where, why. I knew that it's going to be a little bit more than that. Spanish language media, journalism is not just about giving news. We really need to empower people. Empowerment through, political empowerment was important, through information. So ever since then, I think it became my passion, and then eventually became my mission, because I would say that that's pretty much what guided the direction of my career. So I've been covering news at Univision for 37 years. And after Univision, I left about 5 years ago. I continued to work a little bit, first in Investigation Discovery, and then on CBS News, and now on ABC News. So to me, it was important. To me, the job that I was doing was important, and I was there 37 years. And I worked at the local level for 6 years, and then I went on to the network. And when I moved from the local station to the network, it was like starting all over again. It was like a new beginning for me, because one of the most important things in journalism is knowing your audience, I think, knowing what their needs and wants are. And I knew my community in LA because I was a part of the community that I was reporting to. Just like them, I was also the daughter of Mexican immigrants. Just like them, I was, part of a family that was working class. So I always felt a connection because I felt that I was part of the community that I was reporting to. Going into the network, all of a sudden it's a whole country, and you have people from all different types of countries. And it was a new learning experience for me, but it was important to do that because it's important to understand who your audience is and understand the idiosyncrasies of each community. I think that's something that we're seeing now, where we're at a time where most Latinos, Hispanic, Latinx, whatever it is you want to call them, identify more as multicultural and multi-ethnic than anything else. We learned from the community learned from us. We provided information to the community became a lot more sophisticated, a lot more knowledgeable, a lot more demanding, and we grew together hand in hand. That's why I think we play such an important role. So why, if I thought Spanish language TV was so important, why did I leave? I mean, I was there 37 years, and someone said, why did you leave after 37 years? I said, why doesn't anybody ask me why I stayed here 37 years? I mean, that's a lifetime, right? That's an entire lifetime. And there's, everyone has reasons why they think it's time to reinvent themselves. And I have a very long list of reasons. At that point in my career and at the place where I was, I felt that there was no more room for growth. And sometimes when people say, oh, how does it feel to be at the pinnacle of your career? And I said, no, I never want to be at the pinnacle of my career. The moment you reach the top, you have two options. Either you cling on till dear life so you don't fall, or you have to start going down. Otherwise, you can't just float around. So I needed to grow. I needed to grow personally, and I needed to grow professionally. I feel that I needed new challenges. And that is one of the many reasons why I thought that this was time. They said, well, did you think that you were at retirement age? I might have almost been at retirement age, but I didn't leave because I was told to be on TV. I left because I was still young enough to be able to reinvent myself and continue doing new things and new projects. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And so ever since I have a production company, and I've done a few things, and I'm constantly in development looking for things to do. But news drew me again. CBS offered me to come to them, and even though I didn't want to do news anymore, I saw it as an opportunity to do another one of those things on my list, which was to continue informing the Latino community and to telling their stories in other platforms and to other audiences. And one way of helping to elevate and empower communities is telling their stories to other audiences. That's why, I was happy to do that at CBS. I'm even happier to do that now at ABC, because at ABC, not only am I a contributor, but I'm also a consultant with the Race and Culture Unit. So to me, that's important. And they're very receptive. And I think, now more and more so-called mainstream media is understanding that they not only need to fill quotas and hire people of color, from and different minorities and women in their staff to say that they can check out and say, look at how diverse and inclusive we are. I think some of them are beginning to realize that it's more than that. It's respecting your audience and allowing some of these journalists that understand their communities to tell those stories. And I hear it over and over and over and over again, how important it is for journalists, especially young journalists, to feel that the work that they do helps their community, that their life experience is taken into consideration when they're doing their job.